So just a quick overview of what we're going to do today. We're going to start with just some introductions, get to know the panel members. We have 4 people with us today. Get to know a little bit about them, their facilities, their experiences, and then I have a nice long list of questions that students submitted that they would find to be helpful. So we'll go through those. If you guys think of any questions throughout the event, feel free to just message me on the little side group chat that we have going on here. I will do my best to keep checking it. So if you think of anything, just let me know. So I guess we just get started. Dr. Pagano, I actually can't see you. I don't know if anyone else can. Your video looks like it's turned off for us. Oh, maybe she can't hear us. Okay, I'll message her real quick. I know she said she was going to do this from home today, so maybe it wasn't completely set up. All right, hopefully she joins us in just a moment. So let's just jump right into this. So first we're going to start with Jordana Pepper. She is actually one of my colleagues from Nova Southeastern University. So Jordana is joining us today as kind of a student perspective. She went to NSU. She got her undergrad from University of California at Berkeley in neuroscience and linguistics, I believe. So she took some, yes, great, I got it. She took some time off at about 5 years and lived in Israel and then came back and started her doctorate studies at NSU. So we're super excited to have Jordana as our student perspective. And she will be getting an internship in just a couple weeks very soon. So she'll tell us a little bit more about what she's expecting to have at the internship experience. Next we have Dr. Dickey, who is joining us from pretty far up north in Wisconsin. So Dr. Dickey is currently at the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, got some interesting titles. So he is a chief psychologist, internship director, sexual offender program specialist. So we're super excited to have you to have kind of that state DOC perspective to hear a little bit more about Wisconsin Department of Corrections. And then we also have Dr., well, still can't see her, but Dr. Pagano is from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So we have 2 representatives from that from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. She started the internship at FCC Victorville, which is really great. And she's the current training director. She has her PhD from Palo Alto University, did her internship at the BOP at the Metropolitan Detention Center in LA. And she's been at FCC Victorville since about 2015. And she's currently an internship coordinator. So we'll hear about her experience at that facility. And then lastly, we have Dr. Heigl, who is joining us from the BOP, but kind of an overall arching position as she is working for the entire central region of the BOP, which is great. So she graduated with her PhD from George Mason University, did internship at BOP also, so kind of keeping that all together. She went full-time into the BOP at Allenwood in Pennsylvania. She's been kind of all over the place in BOP doing a lot of cool things. Advanced care level psychologist with clinical services for severely and persistent mentally ill male inmates, creating the internship program at FCC Allenwood. And as I said, her current position is in the central office where she is overseeing the entire internship programs there, managing community education, training, recruitment, retention, pretty much anything and everything she's handling over there. So we are super excited to have everyone here. Thank you so much. Oh, there we go. We can see Dr. Pagano now. We can't hear you, but we can see you, but I'm sure that we'll be fine. We can't hear you. I can see you miming for us.
How about now?
Perfect.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
I'm glad you got that figured out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Sorry, technology and I are not good friends.
That's okay. We're still, it's been a couple months now. We're all still trying to figure out Zoom. So good. Thank you so much. So we are just going to kind of jump in and start learning a little bit more about our 4 panelists and the places where they are employed or going to be doing an internship. So we're going to start talking about some BOP facilities first. So Dr. Heil, do you want to just explain to us a little bit more about some of the stuff you do and your role in internships?
Absolutely. And then I'll throw it over to Dr. Pagano to definitely tell you more about the Victorville program, which is an amazing program. And she's done a fantastic job there as the internship, as the training director, building that program from scratch into a great training experience. But overall in the Bureau of Prisons, we have 13 psychology internship programs, 12 of which are fully accredited by the APA. And we really have a wide range of experience. So they go everywhere from having some forensics experience, having sex offender experience, experience with some of our residential programs for severely mentally ill inmates. We also have drug abuse programming available at every one of our 13 institutions. So you'll get experience with substance abuse programming in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And really, we have a great core group of training directors. Every one of our training directors is very passionate about the trainings. We work together really as a team. Opportunities that you can get in the Bureau of Prisons is I just started this year a on-site training in February. So who knows if it will happen again next year, but we'll figure it out. But an on-site in Denver, Colorado, we brought together all of our interns, 53 interns together, gave them some information about not just applying at the Bureau and jobs at the Bureau, but really experience on supervision, multicultural, other aspects of working with corrections in general. So that is a really unique opportunity that the federal prisons has for all of its interns that, again, not sure what will happen in the current intern cohort, but for you guys applying for the following year, hopefully we'll be back on track and you'll have a week in Denver to look forward to. I will also give the shameless plug that our internship programs are pretty well paid. About $53,000 is the low end of our internship programs. So I always like to throw that out there as well. But I know that we have a lot of questions. And I just want to say, if anyone is interested in talking more about the specifics of your interests in relation to what Bureau of Prison sites would be beneficial to you, I am happy to do that. I am guessing that contact information will probably be put out at some point for the panelists. Okay, Brandy, I see you shaking your head. So I'm happy to talk with people individually as well, because we do have a wide variety of clinical experiences that you can have while in one of our Bureau internship programs. They are also across the country. And I also do want to put the plug in that even if you don't match with us for internship site, if you're interested in working in corrections, we hire from Bureau, and also I know Victoria and I are both Bureau interns that hired in, but we do hire non-Bureau interns in. I promise you we do. So if you're interested, even post-internship in a job in the Bureau, we can hook you up with that too. And I'll toss it over to you, Victoria.
Oh, thanks, Karen. So I'm Dr. Pagano. I'm the training director at FCC Victorville. So we are a complex, which means that we have 4 separate institutions all located on the same campus. We have 1 high security men's penitentiary. We have 2 medium security men's FCIs, and then we have 1 minimum security women's camp. So across the complex, we serve roughly 5,000 inmates. So with such a large number of inmates, as you can imagine, we actually have like quite a diverse group of people from like race and ethnicity, age, gender, socioeconomic status, religious affiliation, educational levels, as well as like clinical presentations. So people who have absolutely no history of mental illness to those with serious mental illness and severe personality disorders. As for our intern clinical duties, so our training program, like the aim is to provide well-rounded training and to basically turn out good entry-level clinicians who can also function competently in a correctional environment. So our clinical duties are really meant to offer a variety of supervised clinical experiences that will be helpful both if you were to stay on in the Bureau of Prisons, as well as to be able to take with you if you decide that that's just not the career for you. So our clinical duties do vary a lot by rotation, and I'll get into those in just a second, but we do have some kind of general clinical duties that our interns can expect to engage in throughout the year. Things like intake assessments, testing batteries, short and long-term individual therapy, diagnostics, creating treatment plans, things like that. So let's see, at FCC Victorville, we do have 3 separate rotations that each of our interns go through. So one rotation takes place at the women's camp, and the primary focus of this rotation is trauma assessment and treatment in the female offender population with diagnoses of PTSD and trauma-related disorders. Another rotation is in one of our men's medium security institutions, and it's a residential treatment program that we call BRAVE. There's only 2 BRAVE programs in the entire BOP. So we are home to one of them. And so in this rotation, our interns function as part of the interdisciplinary treatment team. And so they spend the majority of their rotation in the BRAVE unit, providing this residential treatment to youthful first-time federal offenders. And then our third rotation takes place at our men's penitentiary. And this is our fastest paced rotation. It is meant to mimic what the role of a staff psychologist in the BOP would actually look like. And I will say that probably one of the primary focuses of this rotation is the provision of crisis intervention. We have a lot of suicide risk assessments at the pen. I want to make sure I cover everything. Oh, so training opportunities. So our training opportunities are both psychology and correctional in nature. So our interns spend their first 2 weeks of the training year engaged in what we call Introduction to Correctional Techniques. So this is a 2-week program for all new BOP employees, and it's really meant to focus on just what it's like to be a correctional worker and to work inside an institution. Those 2 weeks are then followed by a week of psychology-specific orientation training. And then we have our didactic seminars throughout the year that cover a wide variety of topics. We have a diversity series, we have an ethics series, we focus on case law, forensic topics, and then all of our general psychology topics as well. And then lastly, we are very fortunate at Victorville to be located in very close proximity to 2 other BOP internship programs. So we have Metropolitan Detention Center Los Angeles and FCI Terminal Island. So because we are roughly an hour and a half away, we actually do joint seminars with these other training programs throughout the year. So we do at least 6 joint trainings throughout the year, 2 at each institution. And I think that's it.
Great.
I think something to add too is that at all of our internship sites, once interns get their feet underneath them and get those core skills, we actually have the opportunity to do at least 1, if not 2, what we call temporary duty assignments. So you actually could go to another institution. You're still going to have a licensed psychologist to provide you supervision, but it's actually a great opportunity to see that see other institutions, especially if it's one that you're interested in applying for a job, to see if you like that. But that's also a really unique opportunity that we have within the agency that we provide interns.
Great. Lots of good info. And sounds like you're in a nice little spot over there where you have lots of other facilities close to you. So maybe you and Jordana will be seeing a little bit of each other this upcoming training year, since you guys will be located next to each other. So thank you so much. So we're going to move over to Dr. Dickey and learn just a little bit about his position at Wisconsin Department of Corrections. It's a little bit different than what we just heard about. So Dr. Dickey, welcome.
Yeah, it's a little different. There's a lot of similarities as well, but we are a state correctional facility. So one of the things that I wanted to cover and what makes the Wisconsin Department of Corrections internship unique is that we're actually not comprised of just one correctional site. Rather, we're a collection of different sites, including institutions and community corrections. And interns are placed into one of 3 hubs. And if you don't mind, can I share my screen?
I think Ashley would have to.
No, I
give you
can't. It's
permission.
disabled.
Oh.
So
Sorry.
what I wanted to show was that there's 3 hubs that are a part of the internship. So when interns apply and end up ranking us, they can actually rank up to 3 different hubs. And those hubs are located in the northeast Wisconsin area of the state, and then Milwaukee and Madison areas. And within each of those hubs, there's a collection of institutions and Department of Community Corrections sites that interns can be placed at. So right now, we have 6 sites that are available in the Madison area, 7 in Milwaukee, and 11 in the northeastern part of the state. We also offer 2 forensic rotations, advanced forensic rotations at the end of the year, which are geared towards primarily individuals who are interested in sex offender assessment and evaluations. So one of them is with our Chapter 980 program, and that's our civil commitment program here in Wisconsin. And then we also have one that's in the Department of Community Corrections. It's a sex offender risk assessment rotation where interns would assist a psychologist in doing evaluations as a part of pre-sentence investigations. So those are some unique opportunities that we offer. We don't offer quite as much money as the BOP. I think the stipend right now is it's around $38,000 per year. We do offer travel reimbursement, however, since interns will often be placed at 2 sites during the first 6 months, and then they can change and do another 2 sites. So they can be placed up to 4 different sites, 4 or 5, depending upon if they choose the advanced rotations towards the end of the year. But travel reimbursement is included with that. Some of the things that interns would partake in or participate in with the internship. So assessment, therapy, consultation, and being a part of a multidisciplinary team is a big part of it. They're viewed, although they're interns, they're viewed as being part of the larger psychological services unit, or PSU. There's also opportunities for doing sex offender treatment evaluations, which are not risk assessments rather, but what they are is when individuals come to prison and they have a sex offense, we evaluate them to determine what their risk levels are and what their treatment needs are at that time so that we can place them into appropriate treatment programs. So interns generally are involved with that. Also minimum custody evaluations, conducting intakes, and then doing clinical monitoring, which involves following up with inmates that have been assigned a mental health code. I mean, it's a way that the Wisconsin Department of Corrections tracks individuals that have been determined to have some form of mental health issue ranging from mild to severe. Yeah, so let me just make sure I'm covering everything here. Training opportunities. So we collaborate with the Mendota Mental Health Institute, which is in Madison, and also the Lincoln Hills School, or it's Lincoln Hills Copper Lake School, which is up in Irma, Wisconsin, and that's a juvenile facility. And both of those are APA accredited along with us. We're also APA accredited. But usually we have seminars every Friday with interns from those sites. Prior to COVID, that took place at our central office in Madison. And would usually be in the morning hours, and then we would do group supervision in the afternoon. But due to COVID, we've stopped meeting in Madison, and it's all been virtual. We've been doing all of our Friday seminars and group supervisions over Zoom since that time. There's also, since we're such a large organization, we have a lot of psychologists with that have specialties in different areas, and they also come together and provide trainings as well for psychologists for CEUs. Yeah, so I think that pretty much sums it up in a nutshell.
Sure does. Lots of good information. It sounds like you guys have a great program up there with lots of different, I mean, people can tour the state of Wisconsin and see all the different correctional facilities
Oh
at
yeah,
the same
they'll
time.
see a lot of Wisconsin.
I'm sure touring Wisconsin is on top of a lot of people's end of COVID to-do list. So lots of good opportunities there. Thank you. And now we're going to move over to Jordana Pepper. Jordana, since she's the student representative here, she's going to talk just a little bit about her education, how it kind of shaped her path into a correctional-based internship. And she's going to tell us about her upcoming internship at MDC in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm super excited to be on this panel and talk to you because I'm very passionate about working in corrections, and it's not a path that I thought I was necessarily going to take when I started the program. I knew I was going to be in forensic. I knew I wanted to do forensic, but I really didn't know a lot about the overlap between forensic and corrections until I did my forensic rotation, and that's one of the unique things that NOVA has to offer. And I think Palo Alto University also has a forensic program as well. I'm not sure about other programs in the country, but I know at least for us, we have a great forensic concentration. And because of that, you have to do a forensic practicum where you get exposed to so many different niches within the forensic umbrella. And one of the sites that we were able to train at was the West Palm jail, West Palm Beach jail, the county jail out there. And so that was really my first experience in corrections. And I remember my first day not really knowing how it was going to go. I was very apprehensive. I was a little scared, to be honest. I just really didn't know what to expect. And I got there and I just fell in love with working in corrections. I really enjoyed working with the population. There were so many interesting cases to see. It's not for everyone. And I feel that if you want to go into an internship in corrections, it's a good idea to at least see what working in a correctional facility is like, because I didn't really have a good idea of what it was until I got in there. So maybe if you don't have the opportunity to do a rotation, maybe going to visit and seeing what, a day in the life of would kind of look like. And I just really loved it. I met very interesting people. You hear so many different stories. You see a lot of trauma, which is something that I was also interested in. You have the ability to do assessments, diagnostics, brief treatments. So something with me, I'm more assessment based. I'm more on that track as opposed to the therapy track. And I thought that corrections kind of gave me a great segue into brief treatments as opposed to longer treatments, and then more opportunities to do quick assessments, risk management, risk assessments, diagnostic assessments. And I really gravitated towards that. So I figured out pretty quickly that I enjoyed corrections and it was something that I wanted to explore more of. And I always had the BOP in the back of my mind because a lot of people in Nova Forensics, they do very well at matching to BOP sites. We have people at Butner, we have people in Allenwood, Terminal Island. So we have a lot of people who have gone to the BOP. So it was kind of like the thing that a lot of the forensic students shoot for, strive for. And so I knew I wanted to apply. I'm also from Southern California. So I geographically restricted. And I think if I had one thing to do over again, I would have applied to more BOPs all over the country rather than just kind of focusing on one certain area, because each BOP is so different. I matched at MDC, which for me was perfect because it's more of the forensic hub of the BOPs, as was told when we were doing our interviews. So we also have 3 4-month rotations. One is a general population, one is a major mental illness, and then one is forensic assessment. And so I knew that that was something that I really wanted to do because, like I said, I'm more assessment based. But then, I have a friend who matched in Terre Haute, Indiana, and she's going to be able to work with death row inmates. And that was something she really wanted to do. And I know some focus more on sex offenders. So each BOP has such a unique feel. And so that's one thing I would say, if you're interested in a BOP, maybe don't do what I did and geographically restrict, and maybe, what cast your net a little wider so you can really see what all of the sites have to offer. But I will be starting my internship on the 31st at MDCLA. I'm really very excited and happy to answer any questions about how the interview went, the application. I know interviews are going to be different because of COVID. I don't know if they'll even be in person, which I think is a shame, but obviously safety is the main priority. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions from a student perspective.
Great. Thank you so much, Jordana. I have a list of kind of question and answers. So there's some sprinkled in there for Jordana from a student perspective. So we're just going to kind of jump into this portion because I'm sure that's what a lot of people were anticipating and excited to listen to. If you guys look over in the chat really quickly, also, we have a whole document about the different BOP sites. So thank you so much for sharing that with everyone. So it's a PDF. Feel free to download that with a lot more information. So for the Q&A portion, it's going to be kind of discussion panel-y, just kind of leaving it open for all of our panel members to offer some insight about their experiences at their certain agencies and words of wisdom to future students. Coming from a student perspective, I think a lot of us are very worried and anticipating how the future is going to look for clinical training, internships, and all of that. So I'm sure we have quite a few anxious students looking to get some more information. So we'll have about maybe an hour or so of questions and answers. If we don't last that long, that's fine also. So first, I would like to ask everyone, what should students consider when they are determining what type of forensic or correctional psychology internships to apply to? So for example, a lot of forensic psychology students apply to state hospitals, while others may stick to correctional facilities, whether it be BOP or state facilities. There are some community correction options also. So how should students figure out what fit is the best for them?
I'll unmute first. I would say, and I've been doing the APA virtual job fair today, and I had a similar conversation with a couple people on there. Just because you don't have a history in corrections, of a practical experience, clinical experience in corrections, doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider it. I 100% agree with Jordana. I think that it's important to get an experience if you can, to get a sense of, do you like it? Is this somewhere I feel comfortable? And is it a good fit? But if you don't have that, if you have experience at an outpatient clinic, an inpatient clinic, a state hospital, so many of those clinical experiences translate so well into correctional environments, because that is a lot of some of the same clinical interventions that you might be using, and it's in a different environment, but you already are adept at managing crisis intervention, working with severely mentally ill individuals, interdisciplinary treatment teams, and those are very important things in corrections. One thing I'll add before I throw it out to the other panelists is I think a lot of it is about finding the fit for you. So like I said, the Bureau of Prisons has 13 different programs, and they're all very different. So if you aren't interested in forensics, some of our sites have a lot of forensics emphasis, and maybe that wouldn't be as much of an enjoyment of an internship year for you as going to FCC Victorville with Dr. Pagano. They don't have forensics treatment, but you are going to get some hardcore, what is it like to be in a correctional environment? FCC Victorville is like that. We also have FCC Allenwood up in Pennsylvania, FCC Terre Haute in Indiana, as well as FCI Tallahassee and FCI Terminal Island, and FCC. A lot of our other internship sites are at medical centers, or as LA is, at a detention center. But we do have institutions that just give you that pure correctional experience that, if you're looking to go into corrections, is a great opportunity. So it's really about digging in and finding the right fit for you.
Thank you so much. Lots of good info. All right. Jordana kind of shared her experience, how she figured that out for herself. So I think that's something a lot of students may have the opportunity to do. So thank you, Jordana, for that. Any other comments on that one?
Yeah, I think I just want to add, so for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, we advertise as a correctional site, or advertise as offering correctional and some forensic experience. But we consider our internship to be more generalist, in that we're really interested in training individuals to be able to practice as psychologists, after internship, regardless of what setting they choose. Many of our interns do stay on and end up working for us each year. We take 10 interns each year, and generally we have between 5 and 7 on average that'll stay on each year for not for a formal postdoc, but for a job where they can get their postdoc hours. But it's similar to what Karen was talking about. I mean, we really look for interns that have just good interns that have quality experience in in their with practicums, state hospitals. If they've had practicums at correctional facilities, great. If not, that's I would still encourage you to apply. We just want people that have good experience, especially with assessment. I mean, I think that's one of the main things that we look at.
Great. All right. Victoria, anything to add to that? Did they kind of cover all the good points?
No, I would agree with both what Karen and Jonathan were saying. And I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of that, it's about the fit and having relevant experience, whether or not that's behind bars or behind the wall, as we say. So ultimately, if you are interested in major mental illness, doing your research and seeing what institutions would offer you an experience with that, and being able to tie it in with whatever experience you had, whether that was in an inpatient setting or in a previous correctional setting. It doesn't necessarily have to be correctional in nature, as long as you're able to kind of make that connection between your experiences, where your interest lies, and you've done your homework enough to know that that's where you're applying to. So being able to kind of see, okay, what institution offers me, if it's crisis intervention, if it's trauma treatment, if it's assessment, and really going full steam ahead with those institutions that offer those particular experiences, because they are ultimately going to be very different one from one another.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, so next question would be, I think as doctorate students or future doctorate students, we're by nature kind of competitive in one way or another. So what can students do while they're in their doctorate programs to become a more competitive applicant for applying for these internships? Because I know many of us are aware that they are very competitive, and that's kind of in our thought process at all times of what we can do to help ourselves out. So whether it be research, specific types of experiences, classes, training, what really helps students kind of set themselves apart?
I think just kind of what I was mentioning, like if you are applying to a site, being able to have some form of experience in working with a similar population or treatment modality, something along those lines. We see a lot of substance use treatment in corrections, so maybe something along those lines, or serious mental illness, working in an inpatient setting. If you've had an interest in trauma treatment, did you work in some kind of trauma recovery program or a VA setting, something like that. So being able to have those relevant experiences that you can then bring into your interview and speak about when you're interviewing at your correctional site.
Great. Jordana, was there anything that you found within your application when you were applying that was really helpful for you that you discussed in interviews often?
I remember that I tailored one of my essays to my experience in corrections at the jail. So I definitely knew that I wanted to apply to corrections. So I made that clear in my application. In terms of my interviews, interestingly enough, I don't really remember being asked a lot of specifics about my application, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm not sure if it's just the specific sites that I went to. So I felt like it was more, they use that information to determine whether you could be a good fit or not. And then once you get there, it's more of seeing how you kind of vibe at the institution, how you meet a lot of you meet the training director and then staff psychologists, and you get a tour. Now, again, it's going to look different this year, I have a feeling, because of COVID. So I'm not sure, what that's going to look like, potentially being done virtually and not on site. But I was asked a little bit to talk about my experience, like my relevant experience, but it was more to see if I could be a competent practitioner in the setting. So a lot of the sites I went to would give vignettes and say, if you had a patient like this, what would be some things that you would consider? What would you do? I feel like at the correction sites, they would give scenarios. What happens if an inmate gives you something to give to someone else? What happens if an inmate asks you to pass a message along? Things like that, where they want to see that you understand the basics of how a correctional facility functions. Like, no, you shouldn't be carrying messages or doing things for inmates that they're asking you to do, things like that. But it wasn't really totally tailored to my application and asking me more personal questions like that. I feel like that was like very minimal in my interviews.
Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Dickey or Dr. Heigl, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think fit is important. When we're reviewing applications, I mentioned it earlier, but one of the big things that we look at is assessment experience. In recent years, we've also considered whether or not someone has like projective experience. That's not a make or break type of thing, but what we're really looking for is someone who's like well-rounded with their assessment skills, like experience with WACE, MMPI or PAI, other of the big name instruments, as opposed to screeners. If we see somebody that has only has experience with like screening instruments, that might put them behind others that have more involved assessment experience. And then intervention, we're just looking for someone who has experience that, in a variety of areas. I mean, it helps if they have experience with a correctional population, that lets us know that, that we're not going to have to do that much more training when they come on. But it's not going to prevent somebody from being matched with us. We've had people match with us that had absolutely no correctional experience prior to coming on board, and it's worked out. It's because, again, we're really focused on getting people that are just like good people. I'm going to say that again. We're looking for good people that that really want to learn and want to be with us. But when it comes to the screening process, we do look at the things that were mentioned. We do look at that fit.
Great, thank you so much.
I'm just going to add really quick, because it's come up a couple times now about what interviewing is going to look like. For the Federal Bureau of Prisons, we're going to do what is called courtesy interviews at what institution is closest to the applicant. So this is where we do a core values assessment and a pre-employment integrity interview, as well as a general human resources panel interview. And that will, normally those take place at obviously the institution you've applied for, the internship. But unfortunately this year, in order to reduce travel for people, they're going to take place at whatever institution is closest to you. So let's say you applied for the internship at LA, but you go to Nova. You might end up doing your courtesy interview at FDC Miami or FCI Miami, and not at the institution where you're looking to do your internship. We're then going to have some follow-up remote psychology interviews So virtual, likely hopefully over a video, so that you at least get a sense and you can meet and talk with the psychologists and potentially the interns at the site. But unfortunately this year, and per APIC guidance, we had to do what we could to restrict the travel that intern applicants have.
Yes, that leads perfectly into probably the most submitted question that I got. Everyone wants to know what is happening in the future, but I think the general answer is we still really don't know. A lot of things are still moving and changing and happening. So do you have any other insight that you could offer about how things are going to change in the future with COVID?
Corrections is a unique beast. We are on site, and we do not provide remote clinical services to our inmate population. So as an intern, as a staff member in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, our staff are still coming on site to the institutions. Obviously, we have screening sites, we have PPE, things like that. But the expectation is that you are considered an essential worker, and you are coming onto the institution grounds and providing services directly to the inmate population. The interview process is changed, but that is to reduce travel, as well as, we have applicants that interview at multiple places across the country, and who knows what airfare and air travel is even going to look like in January. So we were really trying to do everything we could to reduce that. But in terms of if you match, you show up and you're in there at the institution.
So some stuff's changing, but you're still going to be kind of hitting the ground running, getting that experience. That's great. Dr. Dickey, do you know of any changes that are occurring for Wisconsin Department of Corrections?
Right. So I'll start with the interview process. So this fall, we're gonna do interviews 100% virtually. In the past, we would usually have the interns go to either Milwaukee or Madison to do interviews. Not at the individual sites, just because they're all over the state, and logistically that would have been difficult. But this year, following APIC guidelines, we're going to hold the interviews virtually. What I plan to do is host several open houses prior to interviews, so that applicants can get more information about the internship and the sites that are offered and the different types of experiences. On the interview day, it'll be virtual. It'll probably be like an hour interview with a panel of psychologists, including myself. And then after that, we'll devote time for them to have a Q&A with the current intern group. As far as how the site is going to be structured, as you said, things are up in the air. It all depends upon how things go with the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, Wisconsin is considered to be in the high risk category, unfortunately. And our governor just instituted a statewide mask mandate. So all of our facilities, staff are required to wear masks when they're at work, including interns. Our interns, some of the things that adjustments that we've made, as interns have all received laptops with VPN access, or virtual private network access, so they can access their email and their files from home. And that's also allowed us to do a seminar and group supervision on Fridays remotely as well, so they can do those from home. And I envision that we're going to be doing the same thing with the incoming group of interns. I can't speak to what things are going to be like, for the interns that are going to be coming in 21, 22. Hopefully we'll be back to in-person by then. But I think that some of the changes that we've made, I think, are probably going to last. I think that, I don't know how things have gone with the BOP, but I know with the state of Wisconsin, I think they've realized that, there's some cost savings that go along with not having, people travel to different sites and have to get reimbursed for that. And so I think that some of our stuff is probably going to stay virtual even after the pandemic ends.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Pagano, any changes aside from what we just talked about that you've noticed at your site?
Somewhat similarly, since we are the complex and we have the different institutions, we've had to do some of our supervision remotely and through like WebEx, things like that, because we at the moment we're calling it a shelter in place essentially. So whatever institution you are assigned to, so for the intern who is currently at the camp rotation, they go to the camp and they can't go to the other institutions where we would normally kind of pick one of the institutions and meet up there for things like group supervision and stuff like that. So didactics and group supervision have changed a little bit right now, but we are hopeful that eventually we can come off the shelter in place. And I don't think that's really sustainable long term, just because of the way that our institution works and the fact that our employees do tend to work kind of across the complex. So I do foresee that being a change once the overall pandemic situation is a little bit more under control.
Great. And you guys may not have a response for this, but any words of advice or encouragement for students who are really nervous and struggling right now with how COVID has impacted their clinical hours and how that may kind of roll over to impacting applying to internship and just, well, APIC said kind of don't worry about it. I think a lot of people are still going to worry about it in the future.
Well, from a training director perspective, I can tell you I'm not terribly worried about the actual number. It's understandable. What's happening right now is obviously out of everyone's control and doing the best that you can. So I personally would not be holding that against anyone in their application who gets an interview, who doesn't. That's not really where my focus lies when I'm looking at an application.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that we recognize that everyone is kind of in the same boat here. That all sites have been impacted by the pandemic. So, when it comes to looking at minimum number of hours, we're willing to look past, some of that, especially this year with the people that are applying, just because we know that it's going to be difficult or impossible in some cases to like meet those minimum requirements. And we'll also be considering, if people, if they have other experiences, telehealth, on top of that, there'll be other things that we can take a look at, program evaluation, different things that can count as clinical contact hours.
And Dr. Heigl, anything to add to that? No.
I agree with it. That I think everyone understands where we are right now, and there's a lot of change and a lot of understanding that the training directors have for the change in the number of hours that they'll likely be seeing over the next several years, not just this coming year, I think for the years to come.
So everyone can take a big deep breath and just do a little mindfulness, get themselves calmed down a little bit. So very good to know. And Jordana, I would like to ask you a question quick. We've discussed this before in our times hanging out at Practicum together, but what are some of the helpful tricks and hints that you would offer to students that you aren't necessarily given in a formal setting about applying to internship? Some things you would have known that may have changed your application process.
So again, this is going to change because of the difference in travel, but I wish I would have been told as a first year to put money aside for interviews. I was not told that. I was not adequately prepared for the expense of interviewing. And this is with me more geographically restricting. I know people who were all over the country, like one day in New York, one day in California, one day in Texas. And, that it's plane flights and hotels. And, so again, that's going to look a little different. But another thing is, as diligent as you can be about tracking your hours, it's going to save you so much time when you go to apply. So I know I use Time to Track, And I found that to be super helpful because not only can you input the hours, but you can input the assessments that you do, because on the application, it will ask you what assessments do you have experience with, how many have you given? And if you're not tracking that, it's going to be really hard to remember how many PAIs you've done over your, however many practicum sites you've been at. And I know one, like our forensic rotation was completely assessment based. It was we had to get, what was it, like 360, 720, something like a very high number of assessment hours. So the more diligent you are about just keeping track of the hours, keeping track of the populations that you're serving, the demographic breakdowns, it's just going to be so helpful when you go to fill out those applications, because it's going to ask you all of that information. So that was another thing that I wasn't really told. I just happen to be like neurotic with writing things down, so that served me well in this case. But I feel like that wasn't something that was really emphasized to me. They tell you at the beginning of practicum, like, make sure you track your hours, but that's kind of where they leave it. It's not make sure you track your hours and the populations you're seeing and the assessments you're giving. Obviously save all of your reports, because in each of your applications, most sites are going to ask to see one, some sites ask for two, that you'll have to de-identify and provide. So, like Dr. Dickey was saying, his site is they look a lot at assessments. And I know that was really big in a lot of the sites that I applied for, because I am more assessment based. And, those sites are going to want to see, at least for the ones I applied, they want to see comprehensive reports. They want to see that you have at least one personality assessment, some kind of intelligence testing, usually WACE or WISC or something along those lines, WIMS, things like that. Do you do any have you done any neuro testing? Because a lot of times neuro and forensic will overlap, the kind of testing that's done as well. So, the more experience you can get with testing, I think, at least for me, I felt the more well-rounded my application was, because I had more reports to choose from. And so I felt pretty, confident on that front, especially if you're looking to do a more forensic site, because so much of forensic work is report writing and testing. And so if you can show that you're competent in terms of report writing, I think that, at least in my experience, was something that I feel helped my application. So yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you. The hidden hints that we all wish we would know, and now we do. So thank you for that.
And hopefully, you guys will save some money without all of the travel. So that's a really good thing.
That could be one benefit of the future internship applications that we're doing. So that's good. There's one positive thing to get out of all of this. One student submitted a question. I'm not 100% sure if anyone's going to have a really good answer for this, but obviously there's a lot of non-APA accredited correctional type internships. There kind of are the more like community settings and private practices. So one student asked if they should stay away from those type of internships. And obviously we chose these sites because you guys are APA, APLS part of APA, just kind of keeping it in that general family. But I would love to hear some opinions, if you have them, about non-APA accredited internship sites.
I have a lot of thoughts about it. We are not currently accredited because we're so new, but we are very close to our accredited on contingency status. So we just graduated our first intern cohort on Friday. That was their last day. And our site visit occurred in March, and our APA Commission on Accreditation met in July. And I'm honestly just waiting for their final decision, and I should have it by next week. They have like 30 days from when they actually meet to notify us. So I think that the answer is it depends, and that's probably not as helpful as I would like it to be, but it's where I think your program specifically that you're applying to, where they are trying to go with it. If they see APA accreditation is pretty essential, if that's really something that they're working towards. And for me, I was ready to submit our self-study the very first day that our interns started last year. So I think that it's very much dependent on kind of where the value from that particular program lies. If their goal is we are getting APA accredited and we will do it tomorrow if possible, then I think that it is worth considering applying to them, because at this point our accreditation would be backdated to the actual site visit. So if when we get our APA accreditation on contingency status, that will actually apply to our interns who have already graduated, and they will be able to say that they graduated from an accredited site.
Great, good to know. Congratulations on that also.
Thanks.
And Sharon, I saw some smirks from you. Anything to add to what Victoria just mentioned?
I think she put it beautifully. As someone who I created the Allenwood program, and it was hard. It's really, really hard to start a new program going against the APA accreditation, and because you can't get APA accredited until you have interns, and no interns want to come. I mean, I get it. It's certainly a catch-22. But like I said, I think Victoria has done a great job showing the vision of what the program was when there wasn't even a program to be seen when interns came to interview. And I think if you have, it's certainly taking a chance and taking a risk to apply for a non-APA accredited program. And if your school allows you to take that risk, you certainly want to go into it with eyes wide open to make sure that what they're saying makes sense and sounds like a solid training program, that they're talking about a wide variety of opportunities of licensed supervision, of the ability to collaborate with other people. And so there's definitely some things to be more aware of if you're looking at a non-APA accredited program. Unless you're looking at Victorville, and they're going to be contingency any moment now. I guess I can't say that, but I hope so. Fingers crossed that they are. But all other 12 APA Bureau programs are APA accredited, and Victorville will likely follow suit.
Great, thank you for that. And Dr. Dickey, anything to add? Any experiences from your end?
Yeah, I mean, just add to what Karen and Victoria already said. I think that you really have to look at what your situation is, right? I mean, I know some people end up settling on some non-APA accredited sites, maybe because of location, or they just can't for whatever reason, maybe move across the country, or they're limited geographically. But it's a calculated risk, right? You have to look at like what your training needs are and what you hope to do in the future. I believe there's a way, and Karen and Victoria, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, isn't there a way to like that they can look up to see if a site is in the process of getting accredited or if they've applied? Or I suppose you can just ask that question as well from the training directors. But I think that would be good information to know.
It's listed on the APIC information page.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean that I would take a look at that. The thing with APA, I think it just if a site is accredited, it just makes things a lot easier later on. Some licensure boards, will require like more information about the internship if it's non-APA. So yeah, again, calculated risk.
Very good way to put it. Thank you so much. Jordana, another quick question for you. For those students that may not be super familiar with how the actual process goes of applying for internship, can you just give us a brief overview of kind of how you started that process and what it looked like from beginning to end?
Yeah, so I know that most sites require you to have already passed your competency exams before applying. So I knew I definitely wanted to get that done as early as possible so that I could focus on applications. I thought that, at least for me, that was a good way. And I've heard from a lot of people that have gone that route that it was really helpful so that they could get the competency exams out of the way and then really just focus on the application. Because the application is, it's a monster within itself. It's a long process. It's like, applying to undergrad and graduate school on crack. It's like there's a lot going on. So you're going to be writing essays. You're going to, like I said, have to write down all your hours and everything that you've done. You're going to have to get your letters of recommendation, and it's just kind of nice to give yourself time to devote to that without having to also worry about passing your competency exams, where you're also going to have to write huge documents. You're going to have to, make a presentation, go in front of a panel. So that was really helpful for me. And I really just wanted to give myself time. I didn't want to feel rushed with the application process. I wanted it to kind of be as stress-free as possible, because it is a really stressful time. And I will have to say that the whole internship application process and the getting notifications about interviews, it's a really hard time. I think it's very stressful, whether you feel prepared or you don't feel prepared, because you never know what a site is looking for. So you can think that you are 100% perfect for a site. You have everything that you think that they're looking for. You, on paper, you feel like you're a great match. And, you'll get an email back from them that you didn't get asked to an interview. And that's a really hard thing when you've put in so much time and hard work. So I think taking stress off of that process, because it's already going to be very stressful, and at least giving yourself time to get everything done so that you're proud of your application and you feel really confident in your application, and then just kind of trusting the process, because it's a process, and it's not the easiest process in the world, and but you will learn a lot about what you want and what you don't want when you start talking to these sites that you are accepted for interviews with. And you get a really good idea of like the amazing things that these sites have to offer. And you might go to a site that you thought you were 100% great for. They asked you for an interview and you get there and it's not really a great fit. So I think, like, for me, from what I heard from training directors that I talked to, fit is really such a big thing. You can only get so much from paper. And then, when you get in there, when you start talking to the people that you're going to be working with, it's a really cool process. It's very stressful, but very cool. So my advice would be just give yourself enough time to get it done well and to feel confident in your application. I know for us, we have a specific internship class where a professor is working with us on our essays, and they will read over them. They'll give us back feedback that we can do with what we want. But that's very helpful. So if you don't have those specific classes, maybe if you have a faculty that you work closely with and you feel comfortable going to, they could be instrumental in helping you just go over your essays, making sure that everything sounds okay, like you're presenting your best self on paper. That was also very helpful. And just lots of self-care. I think self-care is going to be really important when you go through this process. I know for me it was very, very important. So give yourself time to take some time off too.
Yes, great. Thank you, Jordan. And on the topic of essays, one participant just asked me a question that I would like to pose to the panel. Any tips for making essays stand out? Trying to get some inside information here.
I guess, when looking at the essays, we're looking at, and I'm just going to speak for myself here, we look at, if it's written in a way that like really catches our attention, because to be honest, and I'm sure that the BOP gets this too, when you're reviewing, 50 or 100 applications, right, and you're reading through the essays, you're kind of looking for things that like stand out from the others, right? So some of the best ones that I've seen are like, they're a little bit creative. There's some self-disclosure that's there, but not too much, because you can't do too much. And highlights their experiences, and really puts forth like a sense that like they're really interested in the site. Also, if you're applying to multiple sites, like a big turnoff for me is like if somebody like forgets to like change the name at the top of the site, and it's like some other site's name is on there. So just be careful. Grammatical errors, check it and check it again, because that's also kind of a turnoff. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. You want to stand out, but in a good way. Those examples are ways that you stand out in not so good ways. So those are definitely things that you want to be mindful to avoid, especially I hadn't thought about it. The boundaries one is a great thing. In a correctional setting, you really need to have strong, secure boundaries. And if your essays show some concern in that area, that is a red flag for someone that's reviewing.
I agree with both Karen and Jonathan. I do think that that's a really good question. It's a tough question to answer. I don't know that I always know exactly what I'm looking for, but when I see it, it's like, oh, well, that was either humorous or what have you, something that does make someone stand out in a positive way. But I also have received essays that have like typos or just kind of generally not well written, and so I would be really, really careful with that and make sure that you're having somebody else look over your essays, and even if it's like multiple other people looking over your essays, and just making sure that everything seems to be well written and that you definitely include the correct site name. So being really careful about that.
Yeah, you'd be surprised that happens every year. I don't know for you guys, but yeah, every year I get at least one or two where it has the incorrect site name on it. So
Good to know. And we just had
really scared about that happening. I had to reread my cover letters like 5 times before I submitted to make sure I was sending it to the right place. So yeah, it's just fun.
double, triple check. And Jordana, this question you can probably start out with, and then we can hear the other panel members with their suggestions. But one student asked if there is a certain number of internships you can apply to, as a however many you want. Maybe Jordana, you can tell us how many you applied to and then how many interviews you had. It sounds like this student, they have an internship, like a director of training, but they don't meet them until that process starts. So what are suggestions, guidelines for how many sites to apply to?
I think we were told that like a good number to hit was between 15 and 20 sites. That's what we were told. But from my understanding, you can apply to as many as you want. It is very expensive. So, something to think about. So that's why that's why fit is really important. And I know that as some sites send out their notifications for interviews, some people get a little worried that maybe they haven't gotten as many as they thought, so they'll apply to more. That's one of the interesting things about every site having different notification dates. And I don't know if that's positive or negative, but some sites, like I know I heard from MDC really early. They were the first ones that I heard for. And I think the Bureau of Prisons in general tends to let you know pretty early if you make it to the next phase of questioning or next phase of background checks and things like that. And some as late as, a couple weeks before interviews start. So I personally applied to, I think 19 or 20, and I got 12 interviews. I was really excited about that. But like I said, there were some sites that I thought I would be a great fit for, and I didn't get an interview. And again, it's just a matter of trusting the process. And I really feel that it just works how it's supposed to in a lot of cases. And I think that there are reasons that we don't know as students. We're not at the site, we're not the training directors. They know how their institutions work, and they know from what they're seeing if someone looks like they have great experience but might not be the best fit for the site. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned from this whole process was to try not to take things personally, and that can be really hard when you're getting rejections and acceptances. And I know for me, like I heard from MDC, which was one of the only BOPs that I applied to, and then I got 3 rejections back to back, and I was really starting to question, like, is it me? Like, did I do something? But I think then as I went through the process, just understanding that there's probably something at that site that just wouldn't fit my experience as well. Or, you know, maybe there was something the training director saw that just wouldn't fit with the feel of the site. And, you know, I ended up interviewing at places that were amazing, that were really just really great fits for me. So I think it's trusting the process. I think, you know, these training directors are amazing, and they know what they're looking for, and they know what they're doing, and not taking things personally, and knowing that. I also wrote to a training director actually when I got one of my first rejections at a state hospital that I was really excited about applying to. And I just wanted to see, I knew that they were really busy. I just wanted to see if they had any feedback. I wasn't expecting a response, but I wanted to see, you know, what could it hurt? And she actually wrote me back, and she was really lovely. And she told me, you know, they have hundreds of applications and they only have a certain amount of spots to fill. And it was, you know, just a matter of, you know, 30 people had more relevant experience to what they were looking for. And it had nothing to do with the fact that my application was missing something or was bad. But that was really helpful to me. So I would encourage you to reach out to the training directors. They are wonderful. I mean, we have 3 of them here right now who I'm sure have experiences with that as well. Contacting people, or people who have contacted them when they didn't get accepted for an interview. So yeah, I don't even remember what the original question was. Went off on a little tangent.
You answered all of it. You're fine.
Okay.
And for our other panelists, I know it may have been only 1 or 2 years since you guys applied to an internship, but any suggestions for what you think would be a good number of sites to apply to?
I think that, yeah, I think APIC is sort of the sweet spot is 15, if I remember right. And that's what I usually encourage people, like look around quite a bit. One thing that I do want, that I always tell anyone that's looking at Bureau sites, do not apply to only Bureau sites. So our overall, I sort of jumped into what we're going to look at in COVID, but I didn't sort of explain the overall interview process. But that might explain why I tell people don't put all your eggs in the Bureau basket. Because you apply, November 1st is the deadline for all 13 of our sites. You put in your API, it's reviewed, and then the Bureau of Prisons, because of our hiring guidelines, we have to go through the USA Jobs process in order to do a legal hire for our internship program positions. So what our training directors do is they review all of the applicants that come through the API, and then they determine who they want to move forward in the interview process. And then you'll get an email about the 2nd week of November stating this USA Jobs position is posted for 1 week, and you're invited to apply for that position. And that is a way to move forward in the process, because we have to have this USA Jobs application as part of the hiring. If you get that email and you apply to USA Jobs, it is very, very important, even though it is going to be very repetitive of your API, and I 100% apologize for that and wish I could change it if I could. But you're going to have to submit your transcript. You're going to have to submit a copy of your CV. You're going to have to answer questions about your what you're doing, and you're going to have to, like, your clinical skills you've done, and you're going to have to provide a letter from the school stating that you are eligible to be in the match and be considered, or submit like a receipt of your API when you paid to be a member and submitted, and that shows that you are someone who is supposed to be going through the match. And again, I understand it is very repetitive of what you've already done in the API, but unfortunately that's where we are with HR at this time. So you'll submit all of that application. If for some reason you don't have something submitted in there, let's say your transcript didn't upload, you are not considered. You are now out of the process. And so that is a risky thing. There are, on that email, there's names and numbers of people who you can check with to make sure everything is uploaded appropriately. I encourage you, call them, talk with them. They are on high alert that week because they know that the psychology internship is going on. So those HR specialists are on that email. Whenever we say, please, we invite you to proceed, contact them and let them know, ask them to look through things with you. I mean, obviously they can't tell you, oh yeah, you're going to be 100%. Yeah, this is all fine. But they can say, we don't have a copy of your transcripts, or this letter from your school didn't scan properly and I can't read it. So call them, contact them. So then each institution gets a list of the applicants that made it through the USA Jobs process. And unfortunately, we do lose some people in that USA Jobs. So that's why I always make a point, call those HR specialists, ask them about that, because we don't want to lose anyone that we want to interview. And then it comes to our normal interviews, which I described as being a courtesy interview this year. So after that USA Jobs process, you do an HR panel, and part of that includes core values as well as an integrity interview. If you have any issues on any of those interviews and you don't make it through, you don't make it through any bureau site. So again, this is another area where people can fall off just fall off completely. And I would absolutely hate to see an applicant fall off of the bureau sites and not have had any other sites to apply to. So I always encourage people to look at other sites in addition to the bureau. And then we are happy to talk with people every step of the way along the process to try to keep people from falling off that HR wagon. So that's not necessarily an answer to the number. But I will say, if you're applying to a bureau site, don't just do bureau sites. And then that's another sell for if you fall off at some point, it's okay. After you finish your non-bureau internship, you can still come work for the bureau.
Great, good information to know. Not the direct question we asked, but it was really good info that I'm sure a lot of people didn't even think about. So it was really helpful. We have about 10 minutes left, and I just got 2 more questions so we can get through these, and then we'll kind of call it a day. One student asked specifically for the BOP directors, but I'm sure Dr. Dickey can offer some insight into this also. Could you guys speak to the roles of a correctional officer that an intern may need to kind of take on with an internship year? So are there any little specific things that an intern could expect to be involved with that they may not anticipate?
I do think it will vary across the BOP sites, but we this year actually we're trying very hard not to have our interns get pulled into any non-psychology specific duties, and then they requested to be involved in some more correctional activities. So then we were looking for the opportunities for them, but there are like potentials to do like pat searches of an inmate where you kind of like shake them down. Like a shakedown of a cell where you might be looking for contraband or weapons or things like that. There was some like kind of escorting of showers during lockdowns. The inmates don't have, like, the cells aren't open during the day, and so they need to be escorted to and from the showers. So you literally just kind of walk them over, put them in the shower, lock the door, walk away until they're done, and then bring them back. And then we had one like incident on the yard that was kind of like a big fight, but we weren't really certain who all was involved in it. And so like all of our staff kind of across the board were a part of just sort of like searching the inmates and seeing like, okay, does anybody have any like cuts or scrapes or bruises, anything like that? So those are kind of more of like the correctional duties, but we wouldn't have an intern get pulled to do like spend a whole day like being in the housing unit, being the officer in that unit, something like that.
Great. Dr. Dickey, anything from Wisconsin Department of Corrections that students could anticipate being involved with?
So the interns are not, so Wisconsin DOC is a little bit different. I know BOP, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's the staff are trained as security, and that's a big part of the roles. But for the Wisconsin DOC, the psychologists are viewed somewhat separate. We do get, the interns aren't a part of this, but staff psychologists do get training in POSC, which is positions of subject control and things like that, just in case they find themselves in a situation where they need to escape. But we tend to keep our interns like out of security related situations. The only thing I could think of is if an institution is locked down, the interns, because they wouldn't be able to engage in much clinical activities, they might be asked to help out or assist security with like checking on inmates at the cell front or passing out meals or something like that. But that does not happen often. The other things, I mean, they interns could be involved in writing conduct reports or incident reports, if they see something or involved in an incident. They do get to at least shadow clinicians when it comes to doing clinical observation placements or restraint placements, and usually security is involved with that as well. So, but I think that would be the extent of it.
Great, and then we'll wrap it up with one more question. A student who is in a study program for clinical forensic psychology is not accredited by APA, but obviously many of the sites that we would potentially apply to note they would like students to be from an APA accredited program. Any thoughts on that? Is there any way around it? Are there any suggestions for students that may be from a non-APA accredited program?
Keep waiting for everyone else to unmute. The Bureau of Prisons at this time only accepts applicants from APA accredited programs. So I am sorry to say that applicant would not be able to apply to a Bureau site.
Yeah, it's the same situation with Wisconsin DOC.
Okay, good to know. All right, so this is the end of our time together. It lasted the whole hour and a half, so that was great. I would like to thank every single panel member that could come and speak with us today. It looks like the majority of you had to leave your institutions and do this from home, so I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day. It was absolutely fantastic. We may need to just make this an annual thing, especially maybe one that's updated because of COVID in the next 6 months or so. And it's going to be an ever-evolving topic. So Jordana, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck at internship. Everyone else, thank you. Also, Victoria, congrats on your recent success with your program. And I look forward to talking to everyone again sometime soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for hosting it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.